Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. We actually have some breaking news today with regards to the 49ers. We've made a signing. So we have signed defensive lineman Robert Nkemdiche. There is also a minor update with regards to the Jimmy Garoppolo situation, which we'll talk about at the end of the video. But going back to Robert Nkemdiche, so we signed him to a one-year deal. Let's get to know Nkemdiche a little bit better, shall we? So he was a former first-round pick, 29th overall back in 2016 by the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I do remember leading up to that draft that he was initially in a lot of mock drafts and whatnot projected to be a top 10 pick. He obviously fell for, various reasons, and those reasons are seemingly justified because his career has been okay, we'll put it that way. Ultimately, so look at him now. He's 27 years old, 6'3", 296, so he will definitely be competing for a spot on the interior defensive line. If we look at his career, not the most impressive numbers. He's only started 6 games. He's appeared in 38. He's played for the Cardinals, the Dolphins, and most recently last season with the Seattle Seahawks. It looks like he sat out 2020, I'm going to assume probably due to COVID. Overall, if we look at his career stats, they are pedestrian, we'll put it that way. And seemingly his one good year is where the vast majority of his production came from. That was back in 2018 with the Cardinals. 4.5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 7 quarterback hits, and 1 forced fumble. So, he is definitely a guy who would be coming in to compete for a spot. Albeit him being a former first-round pick, you might think that there's a good chance of it. Look, the interior of this defensive line is stacked. Of course, we have Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw. We signed Hassan Ridgeway, who I think will, based on the contract he got, should be fairly guaranteed a spot. Then we also have Kevin Givens, who's been with the team for a while, and Maurice Hurst Jr. we brought back also on a one-year deal. So in order for a guy like Nkemdiche to make the 53-man roster, he is going to have to come in and just be outrageously productive in training camp, in preseason. My most likely projection for Nkemdiche is a guy who, probably won't make the 53-man roster, but should there be an injury to any of our interior defensive linemen, I could see us bringing him back and being part of a rotation on the interior of the defensive line. So at the end of the day, to me, when I look at his stats and I look at how he's performed, there's definitely a lot of injury concerns. He's missed a lot of time. In 2018, where he had his best year, was when he stayed the most healthy and played the most snaps. Now, he would really have to be able to embrace this defensive scheme, which he would have had something very similar up in Seattle last year. And my guess is that perhaps a guy like Kerry Hyder, who was with the Seahawks last year, who played with Nkemdiche, maybe, threw a name out there to guys like John Lynch and D'Amico Ryans, being like, look, this is a guy that we could absolutely look into. Bring him in camp, maybe he'll impress if he can really take on, the coaching from a guy like Chris Kasarik and D'Amico Ryans. So ultimately, look, this is a very, very low risk, with a possible high reward. Clearly, he had potential coming out of Ole Miss. He was able to, meet some of that potential in 2018, which is now 4 years ago. So he's really going to have to come out and just have the camp of his life. He's going to have to come out and just be incredibly impressive and productive in preseason. Again, very low risk, possible high reward. Ultimately, I think, we might see him back with the 49ers later this year should we sustain an injury to the defensive line. And we all know that really to be able to be successful in the NFL, in this new 17-game regular season plus the playoffs, you have to have depth. So bringing in a guy like Nkemdiche now who can get familiar with the scheme, and then let's say if we do ultimately cut him before the season starts, we could always bring him back and he'll have familiarity with the coaching staff, with the scheme, and just with the 49ers franchise in general. So overall, I think it's a solid signing, not one that's going to really, sway the season really one way or another, but these are the signings that ultimately could become really big deals as we go towards the end of the season in this new, longer NFL. So that's my thoughts on Nkemdiche. Please let me know, guys, in the comments what you think of the signing, if you think he's going to have an impact, if it's more just a depth signing for, preseason and whatnot. But now we're going to move on and very quickly talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. So it's been official that Jimmy Garoppolo has been given permission by the team and for him and his agent to seek a trade elsewhere. Now, this is going to be an interesting topic because the big thing that seems to hold back a lot of, teams and from wanting a guy like Garoppolo is the size of his contract, $25 million. Let's put it out there right now. There's no way with any team is Jimmy Garoppolo going to make that money. This is a very different situation than Baker Mayfield. With Mayfield still, I believe, on his 5th year, his rookie deal, he was not able to renegotiate that contract. So whatever he was going to get paid, which I think was about $18 million, he was getting that no matter what, it was guaranteed. But with Jimmy Garoppolo, if he goes somewhere, he can restructure a contract. I think he and his agent know full well that there's, the Niners can just cut him as soon as he's healthy, and it sounds like he's healthy right now, according to the 49ers. So ultimately, he's not going to make that money. So when we look at it, it's very much a case of, let's say, if the Browns, that's a team that I've talked about quite recently, Deshaun Watson is going to be suspended for, well, we're not sure for how long, but he will be suspended. So could the Browns, who have a ton of cap space, could they, look to acquire Garoppolo for, let's say, a 2023 4th-round pick that could move to a 3rd if he performs at a certain level? They could restructure his deal to maybe do like a 1-year, $10 million deal or something to that effect. That's something that the Browns, have the ability to do, as does any other team who trades for him. So maybe there's a team who really wants to solidify like a backup spot. Now, I really don't think this team would be necessarily interested, but it's a possibility, throwing it out there. Let's say a team like the New York Jets. Now, I'm not exactly sure of their, how their cap situation is, but maybe they'd want to have a veteran guy behind Zach Wilson. I know they have Joe Flacco, they have Mike White, who actually played okay last year, but maybe they'll want that more veteran presence guy. For example, another team name that came out recently, the New York Giants. So Daniel Jones, what's going to happen with his career, we're not entirely sure. Maybe the Giants would want to have a veteran guy like Garoppolo, get him in the building this year, maybe do like a 2-year, $15 to $20 million deal. And if they decide to move on from Daniel Jones after this coming season and they draft a quarterback high, then they have, it would be Jimmy Garoppolo kind of doing the same thing that we saw when the Niners did with Trey Lance all over again. So very interesting. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on the Garoppolo situation too. But overall, it's good to have some breaking news here in July for a signing. And I do want to give a shout out. It was Brad Graham who actually essentially broke the news on Twitter today. I'm going to have a link to his Twitter in the description so you can check that out. Let's give credit where it is due. But thank you very much, guys. I'm going to actually have another video coming out today that is going to be the episode and part 3 of my top 20 most valuable players 10 through 6. Thanks for stopping by, guys. And I'm going to say 2 things. The butt counts. And I'm going to catch y'all on the flip side.